There are people whose lives seem to quietly pass by in the shadows, forgotten amid the noisy flow of society. Mrs. Edith Harper, an elderly woman, living simply, once overlooked by those around her like an invisible shadow. But when a terrible storm struck, when everything seemed about to collapse, she became the only light shining through, saving both a shelter and souls that seemed shattered. Have you ever wondered, among ordinary people, who is truly the hero? This story will make you see that in a completely different way, and perhaps change the way you view life forever. Winter in Kentucky arrived unexpectedly this year, with bone-chilling winds that seemed to cut through flesh and skin. The fiercest snowstorm in years was sweeping into the small town everyone had always thought of as peaceful. Streetlights flickered weakly beneath thick blankets of white snow, while gusts of wind howled past the old rooftops as if trying to blow everything away. Inside the community church, where villagers had been evacuated to escape the storm, the air was warmer than outside, but still heavy with worry and unease. People whispered quietly, eyes fixed on the windows, waiting for the storm to pass. Among the hurried footsteps and noisy voices, Mrs. Edith Harper, 72 years old, appeared quietly like a ghost. She carried no large luggage, only an old, worn suitcase containing a vintage hand sewing machine and a few spools of thread in various colors, carefully wrapped. Her eyes held neither excitement nor fear, but a look of steady resolve, as if she was carrying a secret with her. A young volunteer glanced at her and said softly, but loud enough to be heard clearly, "Why bring a sewing machine here? It's not like we're setting up a tailor shop in a storm shelter." The tone carried a hint of contempt, and the people around quickly turned away, paying little attention. Mrs. Edith didn't respond. She gently set the suitcase down beside a chair in the corner, sat down, and pulled out a handkerchief to dab at the cold sweat on her brow. The old sewing machine, like a loyal friend, lay quietly waiting. She gazed at it for a long moment, as if recalling days long past and untold stories. Outside, the storm raged even louder, snow blanketing the night sky in white. The church's lights flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Suddenly, Mrs. Dahow, Edith placed her hand on the sewing machine and gently pressed the pedal. The first tick-tock sound rang out, a seemingly small noise, yet carrying an unexpected strength amid the chaos. Everyone in the room turned to look, eyes filled with skepticism, curiosity, and a faint glimmer of hope. A silent question hung in the cold air. Can this forgotten lady and her old machine really make a difference in this storm? Amid the biting cold and the wind howling like it wanted to tear through the night, Mrs. Edith remained seated beside her old sewing machine. No one understood what she was doing, and most people saw her as a shadow, almost invisible amid the chaos. Yet it was in those seemingly meaningless moments that Mrs. Edith was weaving a story no one could have anticipated. She gently opened her suitcase and took out pieces of old fabric, scraps that seemed long forgotten, but in her hands, they would have a chance to live again. Each piece held a memory, a story of those who had once lived, loved, and fought here, people whom history had quietly left behind. She began sewing tiny dresses, hand-warming pouches, and soft pads for the frail elderly caught in the storm. Every stitch, skillfully made, every seam firm and sure, seemed to carry silent compassion and quiet resilience. A young girl watched her from the corner of the room, then quietly walked over and asked, "What are you doing? Why don't you rest while everyone else is worrying out there?" Mrs. Edith smiled, her eyes glowing in the dim light. "My dear, sometimes true strength isn't loud. It's the quiet things that can change the world. People may forget us, but we must never forget our duty, to care, to preserve, and to keep hope alive for those still fighting." The young woman bowed her head, feeling the depth of strength within the old woman. Those little dresses and warming pouches were more than just useful items. They were symbols of kindness, resilience, and faith in the future. The storm outside hadn't passed yet, but inside that small room, another fire had begun to burn. The fire of unity, of unspoken but unwavering compassion. Someone whispered, "She's invisible to many, but her power is undeniable." Outside, the storm still roared, with winds that seemed determined to tear apart everything in their path. But inside the fragile shelter where the elderly had taken refuge, another kind of storm, no less fierce, was quietly rising. Everyone thought they had escaped the wrath of nature, but within the thin walls of this refuge, tension and fear were beginning to flare. Mr. George, a war veteran, sat in the corner of the room, his eyes filled with sorrow and bitterness. A painful story from the past still clung to him, and now, as the world trembled once again, those old wounds felt as if they were being ripped open anew. Mrs. Edith, with her great heart and seasoned spirit, sensed the unease. She knew that to truly preserve peace, it wasn't enough to wait for the storm outside to pass. They also had to soothe the storm rising within each person. She quietly walked over to Mr. George, her voice warm but full of strength. "George, the storm out there will pass, but the one inside you, only you can calm it." The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward them. That simple sentence opened a door, one that allowed honesty and compassion to begin seeping into hardened hearts. Another elderly woman, Mrs. Helen, sighed and said, "We've lived through many storms in life, but perhaps the biggest ones aren't from nature. They're the things left unsaid, the pain we keep buried." Mrs. Edith nodded, her eyes tinged with sadness, but full of resolve. "We need each other, not just for physical safety, but for emotional comfort. Without that, these wounds will tear everything apart." The storm outside might sweep away rooftops, but the storm within each heart was what truly needed to be conquered. And in that darkness, small flames of human kindness, understanding, and compassion began to glow brighter than ever. However, the story didn't end there. Because inside that makeshift shelter, someone was hiding a secret, something that could change everything, but it was waiting for the right moment to be revealed. As the howling winds outside still echoed through the silent shelter, a gentle yet powerful figure began to emerge among the weary souls. Martha, their angel with a needle. She wasn't just the keeper of medicine, but also the one who held on to hope and faith for everyone inside that small room. With her skillful hands, she offered silent comfort through each stitch, each small dose of medicine, but most importantly, through deep emotional care. Martha, a woman who had weathered more than 50 years of life, had faced countless hardships. She had learned how to see through the hidden pain behind every smile, behind every unspoken word. She didn't ask too many questions, but she always knew exactly when and where to appear, gently pulling others back from the brink of loneliness. Among the elderly shivering from the cold, from fear, and from the storms within their hearts, Martha quietly took out her needle and thread. She carefully mended the torn coat of Mr. George, a simple act, yet one overflowing with boundless compassion. "We all need healing," she said warmly, her deep eyes looking straight at Mr. George. "Not just the rips we see out there, but the wounds we carry inside." Everyone listened closely, sensing that her words had just opened another door, a door to empathy, to shared understanding. Suddenly, just as Martha was helping, a doubtful sigh rose from the corner of the room. A man had just appeared. Mr. Samuel, a quiet figure who seemed suspicious of everything around him. He didn't believe in miracles, nor in comfort offered through soft words and needlework. He said coldly, "There are wounds no needle or medicine can fix. There are secrets that, if spoken aloud, would only make things worse." Samuel's arrival felt like a cold wind sweeping through the room once more, stirring up uncertainty and doubt. Martha looked at him with eyes that were both gentle and firm. "That's exactly why we have to face them. We can't keep running forever. Healing begins the moment we dare to look truth in the eye." In that moment, no one spoke, but the atmosphere grew heavier than ever. The story of untold secrets still lingered, quiet, simmering, waiting for the day it would finally erupt. In the small room that was gradually warming after the storms and tempests outside, the story of Martha, a simple woman whose hands overflowed with quiet compassion, continued to radiate a silent yet profound strength. She didn't need to raise her voice, nor perform grand gestures, for it was her persistence, devotion, and gentle presence that brought light to a community that had all but forgotten hope. Mr. George, whose torn coat Martha had mended, felt more than just the warmth of fabric stitched together. He felt the warmth of a soul being healed. The long-hidden wounds in his heart began to close, little by little, like a parched flower finally kissed by the morning sun. But it wasn't only Mr. George. Every person in that shelter carried their own story, their own pain, and a sense of helplessness in the twilight of life. With patience and compassion, Martha became an unspoken source of inspiration to them all, a living testament to a simple but extraordinary truth. The smallest acts, when done with a full heart, can create everlasting impact. And then, just when everything seemed to settle into stillness, a phone rang, a call from a distant relative, someone Martha had once quietly helped in the past. Now they were reaching out to say thank you, to remind her that those small, tender gestures had once saved a life. Martha wasn't a hero in some grand tale of the world. She was a quiet hero, unassuming, expecting nothing in return, yet leaving a lasting imprint. Like a gentle rain that nourishes a withering garden, her kindness brought life back to weary hearts. And as the lights in the room slowly dimmed, leaving behind the darkness and a peaceful calm, a question lingered in every heart. In the quiet moments of our lives, are we brave enough to become an angel with a needle? One who silently heals the wounds no one else can see. Mrs. Edith Harper not only mended pieces of fabric, she also stitched together lives that seemed to have fallen apart in the storm. But will a person like her truly be recognized for her worth, or will she continue to be forgotten once peace returns? The story does not end here. The things she did, the marks she left behind, will continue to resonate in the hearts of those fortunate enough to witness them. And you, after hearing this story, will you choose to stand by and watch? Or will you step forward to become the quiet savior of the souls around you?